We are often taught that success is something to chase, something to conquer, something waiting just beyond our next achievement. But what if success is not something you pursue at all? What if success is something that naturally moves towards you when you become aligned with who you truly are? Most people don't fail because they lack talent, intelligence, or discipline. They struggle because they are fighting themselves. They are driven by fear rather than clarity, by approval rather than purpose, by survival rather than choice. And no amount of external achievement can compensate for an inner life lived in conflict. Success does not respond to force. It responds to coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions move in the same direction, life begins to cooperate. But when your inner world is shaped by unresolved pain, success feels distant, exhausting, or temporary. Many of us learned early that love had conditions. Be useful, be strong, be agreeable, be exceptional. And so we built identities around performance instead of authenticity. We became achievers not because we loved growth, but because we feared rejection. That kind of success never feels safe, because it is always one failure away from collapse. The truth is this: your nervous system sets the ceiling for your success. When you live in constant stress, urgency, or self-criticism, your creativity narrows, your decisions become reactive, and your energy drains. But when you feel internally safe, present, and grounded, intelligence flows more freely. Focus deepens. Opportunities become visible. Becoming successful is not about becoming harder on yourself. It is about becoming more honest with yourself, honest about what hurts, honest about what you need, honest about the patterns that once protected you but now limit you. Self-compassion is not weakness. It is regulation. It is the ability to stay present with discomfort without abandoning yourself. And when you stop abandoning yourself, you stop chasing success to prove your worth. You begin creating from wholeness instead of lack. People who attract success are not necessarily the loudest or the most aggressive. They're the most integrated. They know who they are. They don't betray themselves for approval. Their actions come from clarity, not compulsion, from choice, not fear. When you heal, effort becomes lighter. Discipline becomes natural. Purpose replaces pressure. You no longer ask, how do I become successful? You ask, how do I live truthfully? And success follows that truth like a shadow. So done. Ask how to force success into your life. Ask who you are becoming while trying to reach it. Because when you become grounded, authentic, and whole, success does to need to be chased. It recognizes you. Success is often imagined as a trophy placed at the end of a long and exhausting race, something visible, measurable, and admired from the outside. From an early age, we are conditioned to believe that success lies somewhere in the future, waiting for us after we reach a certain income, status, title, or recognition. This belief quietly shapes our behavior, pushing us to sacrifice rest, relationships, health, and even integrity in the hope that one day we will finally arrive. Yet the moment we reach what we once desired, the satisfaction is brief, and another goal quickly replaces it. This endless cycle reveals a deeper truth. Success was never meant to be a destination. It is a state of being. When success is treated as a trophy, it becomes fragile. It depends on circumstances, comparison, and approval. It can be taken away, surpassed, or devalued by someone else as achievement. Living this way creates constant tension because the sense of worth is outsourced to outcomes beyond our control. The nervous system stays in a state of vigilance, always scanning for the next threat to identity or value. In such a state, even achievement feels unsafe because it must be defended and maintained. A state of being, on the other hand, is internal. It is not granted by applause or taken away by failure. It is rooted in alignment, presence, and integrity. When success is experienced as a way of being, it shows up as clarity in decision-making, steadiness under pressure, and the ability to act without betraying oneself. It is not loud, but it is deeply stable. Many people chase success not because they love growth, but because they are trying to resolve an old sense of insufficiency. Somewhere along the way, they learned that who they were was not enough. Achievement became a strategy to earn safety, belonging, or love. While this strategy may produce impressive results, it often comes at the cost of inner peace. The body carries the strain even when the mind celebrates the win. True success does not require the abandonment of the self. In fact, it depends on the opposite. It emerges when a person is connected to their values, their limits, and their inner truth. From this place, action is no longer fueled by fear of failure or hunger for validation, but by genuine engagement with life. Effort still exists, but it is not punishing. Discipline still matters, but it is not violent. When success is a state of being, failure loses its power to define identity. Mistakes become information rather than verdicts. Setbacks are experienced as part of growth, not as proof of inadequacy. This allows resilience to develop naturally, without forcing optimism or denial. The individual remains intact regardless of outcomes. There is also a profound difference in how time is experienced. When success is a future trophy, the present moment becomes merely a means to an end. Life is postponed. Joy is delayed. When success is a state of being, the present moment is fully inhabited. Work becomes an expression of self, rather than an escape from self. Progress happens, but it does not require the rejection of now. This way of being also changes relationships. Instead of using people as stepping stones or mirrors for self-worth, connection becomes more authentic. Competition softens. Comparison loses relevance. Collaboration becomes possible because there is no longer a need to prove superiority in order to feel secure. A person who embodies success does not constantly ask whether they are winning. They ask whether they are living in alignment. They notice when they are disconnected from themselves and gently return. They listen to the body as signals rather than overriding them. They understand that burnout is not a badge of honor, but a sign of misalignment. This does not mean ambition disappears. It becomes cleaner. Goals arise from curiosity and purpose rather than desperation. Achievement becomes a byproduct of presence, not a substitute for it. Paradoxically, this often leads to more sustainable and meaningful success, because energy is no longer wasted on inner conflict. When success is internal, external recognition becomes optional rather than essential. Appreciation can be enjoyed without becoming addictive. Criticism can be received without collapse. The self remains whole regardless of feedback. Ultimately, the most reliable measure of success is not how much one has accumulated, but how deeply one can stay connected to oneself while moving through life. Peace, clarity, and self-respect are not rewards waiting at the finish line. They are the ground from which a truly successful life grows. Unhealed pain rarely announces itself in obvious ways. It does not always show up as visible suffering or dramatic dysfunction. More often, it moves silently beneath the surface, shaping choices, reactions, and limits without being recognized. People may appear capable, intelligent, and motivated, yet feel strangely blocked, inconsistent, or exhausted. This is not a failure of character or willpower. It is the quiet influence of pain that was never given the space to be understood or integrated. Pain that remains unhealed does not disappear with time. It settles into the body and nervous system, becoming a lens through which the world is interpreted. Experiences from the past, especially those involving neglect, shame, or emotional insecurity, continue to inform present behavior. The individual may no longer remember the original moments clearly, but the body remembers. It responds with tension, vigilance, and contraction whenever a situation resembles the emotional climate of earlier wounds. Potential requires freedom. It requires the capacity to explore, to take risks, to make mistakes, and to recover without losing a sense of self. Unhealed pain restricts this freedom. It narrows perception and limits imagination. Instead of responding to the present moment, the person reacts from an old story about danger, rejection, or inadequacy. This reaction may look like procrastination, perfectionism, people-pleasing, avoidance, or relentless overworking. Each behavior is an attempt to protect the self from pain, even as it quietly undermines growth. Many people believe they are held back by a lack of discipline or confidence. They push themselves harder, set stricter rules, and demand more productivity. For a time, this approach may produce results, but it often deepens the internal split. The part of the self that is afraid is silenced rather than heard. The body absorbs the cost. Anxiety increases. Creativity fades. Motivation becomes brittle and dependent on pressure. Unhealed pain also distorts self-perception. It creates an inner narrative that feels factual but is rooted in past experiences rather than present reality. Thoughts such as not being enough, needing to prove worth, or fearing exposure become automatic. These beliefs do not feel like beliefs, they feel like truth. As long as they remain unquestioned, they set invisible ceilings on what feels possible or permissible. Potential is not just about talent or intelligence. It is about capacity. Capacity to tolerate uncertainty. Capacity to remain present under stress. Capacity to stay connected to oneself while engaging with the world. Unhealed pain reduces this capacity. It consumes energy through constant internal monitoring and self-protection. The individual may be busy and productive, yet internally depleted. Relationships are another area where potential is quietly compromised. Unhealed pain shapes attachment patterns, influencing how closeness, conflict, and boundaries are experienced. Fear of abandonment may lead to self-erasure. Fear of engulfment may lead to withdrawal. In both cases, authentic connection becomes difficult, and opportunities for collaboration, support, and shared growth are lost. The tragedy of unhealed pain is that it convinces people that their limitations are inherent. They identify with coping mechanisms as personality traits. They say they are just anxious, lazy, intense, or detached, without recognizing these as adaptations formed in response to earlier conditions. What once served survival now restricts expansion. Healing does not mean reliving the past or assigning blame. It means bringing curiosity to what lives inside. It means noticing patterns without judgment and listening to the body as signals rather than overriding them. When pain is met with compassion instead of resistance, it begins to soften. The nervous system learns that the present is not the past. As healing unfolds, energy previously bound in self-protection becomes available for growth. Focus improves. Creativity returns. Rest becomes restorative rather than restless. The individual begins to act from choice rather than compulsion. Potential, once constrained, starts to express itself naturally. This process is not linear or dramatic. It is often subtle and gradual, but its effects are profound. As unhealed pain loses its grip, the person no longer sabotages opportunities out of fear or self-doubt. They do not need to force confidence. It emerges from a sense of internal safety. Potential thrives in an environment of inner permission. When the self is no longer under attack from within, growth becomes a natural movement rather than a struggle. The greatest obstacle to potential is not lack of ability, but the quiet presence of pain that has been waiting to be seen. Authenticity is not a performance, a brand, or a strategy for influence. It is the simple and often difficult act of being in an honest relationship with oneself. In a world that constantly rewards adaptation, conformity, and image management, authenticity can feel risky. Many people learn early that acceptance depends on fitting expectations, meeting demands, and suppressing inconvenient parts of themselves. Over time, this quiet self-betrayal becomes normalized, and the distance from one as true nature grows. Yet it is precisely this distance that drains vitality and weakens connection. When a person is authentic, there is a sense of coherence that others can feel. Words, actions, and inner experience are aligned. There is less effort spent on maintaining appearances and more energy available for presence. This coherence is not loud or attention-seeking, but it is deeply compelling. People are drawn to those who are at ease with themselves because such presence signals safety. The nervous system recognizes when someone is not hiding. Inauthenticity, even when socially rewarded, creates tension. It requires constant monitoring of how one is perceived, what should be said, and what must be withheld. This internal surveillance consumes energy and narrows awareness. Over time, it leads to fatigue, anxiety, and a subtle sense of emptiness. Success achieved from this place often feels hollow because it is disconnected from the self who achieved it. Authenticity does not mean expressing every impulse or emotion without discernment. It means acknowledging what is true internally, even when it is uncomfortable. It is the willingness to notice fear without pretending confidence, to recognize limits without shame, and to honor values even when they conflict with external rewards. This inner honesty creates a stable foundation from which genuine expression can emerge. People often believe they must become more impressive to attract opportunities, relationships, or respect. In reality, what attracts is not perfection but congruence. When someone is authentic, there is no hidden agenda. Their presence is grounded, their communication is clearer. Others feel less manipulated and more met. This quality builds trust effortlessly. The strongest magnet is not charisma built on image, but integrity built on self-connection. Integrity here is not moral rigidity, but wholeness. It is the state of not being divided against oneself. When a person stops abandoning parts of themselves for acceptance, they become internally unified. This unity is felt by others as confidence, even if the person is quiet or uncertain at times. Authenticity also dissolves unnecessary competition. When individuals are rooted in their own truth, they no longer need to measure themselves against others. Comparison loses its grip because self-worth is no longer outsourced. This frees creative energy and allows collaboration to replace rivalry. Opportunities arise not from striving to stand out, but from showing up fully. There is a profound link between authenticity and regulation of the nervous system. When a person is authentic, the body does not have to brace against itself. Tension softens, breathing deepens. The system moves out of chronic defense. From this regulated state, perception broadens and responsiveness improves. Life feels less like a threat and more like an invitation. Many people fear that authenticity will lead to rejection. And sometimes it does, but what is lost in those moments is usually connection that was conditional to begin with. What remains is self-respect. Over time, authenticity attracts relationships and opportunities that are aligned, sustainable, and nourishing. These connections do not require constant performance to maintain. Authenticity is also a form of self-leadership. It sets a clear signal to the world about what is acceptable and what is not. Boundaries become natural rather than forced. Decisions become simpler because they are guided by internal truth rather than external pressure. This clarity reduces confusion and regret. Living authentically is not a one-time achievement. It is a continual practice of returning to oneself. It requires curiosity, compassion, and courage. But its rewards are cumulative. As authenticity deepens, life begins to respond differently. Effort becomes more effective. Relationships become more meaningful. Work becomes more aligned. The strongest magnet is not the person who tries hardest to be seen, but the one who is most deeply present with himself. When there is nothing to hide, nothing to prove, and nothing to maintain, what remains is a quiet power that naturally draws what belongs. The nervous system is the unseen architect of human behavior, shaping responses long before conscious thought has a chance to intervene. While people often attribute their outcomes to intelligence, discipline, or motivation, these qualities are secondary to the state of the nervous system that supports them. When the nervous system is regulated, flexible, and grounded, clarity and effectiveness emerge naturally. When it is chronically stressed or dysregulated, even the most capable individual struggles to access their full potential. A regulated nervous system allows the body to interpret the present moment accurately. It distinguishes between real danger and perceived threat. In this state, the brain can engage in complex reasoning, creativity, and long-term planning. Decisions are informed rather than reactive. Actions align with values instead of being driven by fear. Outcomes improve not because effort increases, but because the quality of engagement changes. In contrast, a nervous system shaped by chronic stress, early adversity, or unresolved emotional pain operates from survival. The body remains in fight, flight, or freeze, even when no immediate threat exists. This state narrows attention and prioritizes short-term safety over long-term growth. The individual may feel restless, overwhelmed, or shut down without understanding why. Productivity becomes inconsistent, relationships feel strained, and opportunities are missed or sabotaged. The nervous system does not respond to logic alone. Telling oneself to calm down, be confident, or work harder rarely shifts a system that has learned to stay on guard. Patterns of overthinking, procrastination, or compulsive busyness are not personal flaws, but adaptive responses to perceived threat. They once served a protective purpose. Over time, however, these adaptations limit freedom and choice. Outcomes in life are shaped by how much internal safety a person feels. Safety allows exploration. It supports learning, collaboration, and risk-taking. When the body feels safe, mistakes are tolerable, feedback can be integrated, and persistence becomes sustainable. When safety is lacking, even small challenges trigger disproportionate responses. Energy is spent on self-protection rather than creation. The quality of relationships is deeply influenced by nervous system states. A regulated system can stay present during conflict, listen without defensiveness, and express needs clearly. A dysregulated system may interpret neutral cues as rejection or threat, leading to withdrawal, aggression, or appeasement. These patterns repeat automatically, shaping relational outcomes regardless of intention. Work and creativity follow the same principles. Focus, insight, and flow arise when the nervous system is calm and engaged. Under chronic stress, attention fragments, the mind loops on worry, inspiration fades. No amount of pressure can compensate for a system that is overwhelmed. Rest, presence, and regulation are not luxuries. They are prerequisites for effective action. Healing the nervous system does not require perfection or constant calm. It involves increasing the capacity to return to regulation after stress. Practices that foster awareness of the body, such as mindful movement, breath, and attuned connection, help the system learn that the present is manageable. Over time, the baseline shifts from vigilance to responsiveness. As regulation improves, outcomes change in subtle but powerful ways. Decisions become less impulsive. Boundaries feel more natural. Confidence grows without force. The individual begins to trust their internal signals rather than overriding them. This trust creates consistency, which is often mistaken for discipline. Many people chase external success while neglecting the internal conditions that make it sustainable. They push through exhaustion, override discomfort, and ignore warning signs, believing that resilience means endurance. In reality, resilience is the ability to remain connected to oneself under pressure. Without this connection, success becomes brittle and short-lived. The nervous system sets the limits of what feels possible. Expanding those limits requires compassion, patience, and attention to internal experience. As the system learns safety, life opens. Opportunities that once felt overwhelming become approachable. Challenges become engaging rather than threatening. Outcomes are not determined solely by effort or intention. They emerge from the state of the body that carries those intentions into action. When the nervous system is supported, regulated, and respected, life responds with greater ease, clarity, and effectiveness. Self-compassion is often misunderstood as indulgence or a lack of discipline, yet it is one of the most powerful foundations for sustainable drive. Many people believe that achievement requires constant self-criticism, pressure, and the fear of falling behind. This belief may produce short bursts of productivity, but it comes at a high cost. Over time, harsh inner dialogue erodes motivation, drains energy, and creates a relationship with work that is rooted in fear rather than engagement. A drive fueled by self-judgment is unstable. It depends on anxiety, comparison, and the threat of failure. The nervous system remains in a state of tension, pushing the body to perform under conditions that are unsustainable. While results may appear impressive from the outside, internally there is often exhaustion, resentment, and a persistent sense of inadequacy. The individual becomes driven but not fulfilled. Self-compassion changes the source of motivation. Instead of pushing against oneself, it creates an internal environment where effort feels safe. This safety allows curiosity to replace fear and learning to replace self-punishment. When mistakes occur, they are met with understanding rather than condemnation. This response preserves energy and supports resilience, making it easier to continue moving forward. Sustainable drive requires the capacity to recover. Without recovery, effort turns into depletion. Self-compassion recognizes limits without shame. It listens to the body as signals and responds with care rather than force. This does not weaken ambition, it protects it. By respecting the body and mind, self-compassion ensures that energy remains available over the long term. Many people confuse self-criticism with accountability. In reality, criticism narrows perspective and reduces problem-solving ability. Compassion, by contrast, creates space to reflect honestly on what went wrong and what can be done differently. It supports responsibility without collapse. This balanced approach leads to growth that is both effective and humane. The inner voice shaped by self-compassion is steady rather than dramatic. It encourages effort without threats. It acknowledges progress without inflating ego. This voice becomes a reliable guide, especially in moments of difficulty. When challenges arise, the individual does not abandon themselves. They stay present, adjust, and continue. Self-compassion also transforms the relationship with rest. Rest is no longer viewed as weakness or procrastination, but as an essential component of sustained effort. The body is allowed to reset, and the mind regains clarity. From this rested state, focus improves, and work becomes more efficient. Drive returns not through pressure, but through renewed capacity. There is a deeper emotional dimension to self-compassion. It addresses the underlying fear that worth is conditional on performance. By affirming inherent value, self-compassion frees the individual from the need to constantly prove themselves. Effort becomes an expression of interest and purpose rather than a defense against shame. This shift has profound effects on consistency. When motivation is tied to self-acceptance, setbacks do not derail progress. The individual can pause, recalibrate, and resume without losing momentum. This is the essence of sustainability. It is not about never stopping, but about being able to start again without self-attack. Self-compassion also enhances creativity and adaptability. A mind that is not preoccupied with self-judgment is more open to experimentation. It can tolerate uncertainty and take thoughtful risks. This openness leads to innovation and growth that rigid, fear-based drive cannot sustain. Over time, self-compassion builds trust within the self. The individual learns that effort will not be met with punishment, and that rest will not be met with guilt. This trust creates a stable foundation for long-term goals. Drive becomes less volatile and more dependable. Sustainable drive is not about forcing productivity at all costs. It is about maintaining a respectful, supportive relationship with oneself while pursuing meaningful aims. Self-compassion provides the emotional fuel that allows effort to continue without burning out. It turns achievement into a journey that can be sustained, rather than a race that must be survived. Success is often framed as the reward for relentless effort, long hours, and constant pushing beyond limits. Hustle is praised as virtue, exhaustion is won as proof of commitment, and rest is treated as a weakness to be overcome. While effort and dedication matter, hustle alone is not what creates lasting success. In many cases, it becomes a way of outrunning deeper discomfort rather than building something sustainable. True success follows wholeness, not the fragmentation that constant striving creates. Wholeness refers to an internal state where different parts of the self are in relationship rather than conflict. Thoughts, emotions, values, and actions move in the same direction. When a person is whole, there is less internal resistance. Energy flows instead of being constantly spent on suppression, denial, or self-attack. Hustle without wholeness may look productive, but it often masks exhaustion, anxiety, and disconnection. Many people learn to hustle as a survival strategy. They push themselves to achieve in order to feel safe, valued, or accepted. Achievement becomes a substitute for belonging or self-worth. This approach can generate impressive results, but it is unstable. Because the drive comes from fear or lack, it never feels complete. Each success is followed by the pressure to do more, be more, and prove more. Wholeness changes the source of effort. Instead of being driven by fear of falling behind, action arises from clarity and alignment. Goals are chosen because they resonate with values, not because they promise validation. Work becomes an expression of self rather than an escape from self. This shift does not eliminate effort, but it removes the internal violence that makes effort costly. A whole person listens to internal signals. Fatigue is not ignored. Emotions are not dismissed. Boundaries are respected. This attentiveness prevents burnout and supports consistency. Hustle culture encourages overriding these signals, treating the body as an obstacle rather than an ally. Over time, this creates breakdowns that no amount of motivation can fix. Wholeness also affects decision-making. When a person is fragmented, choices are often reactive, shaped by urgency or comparison. When wholeness is present, decisions are grounded. There is patience to wait, discernment to say no, and confidence to pursue what truly matters. These qualities lead to outcomes that are not only successful but meaningful. Relationships play a critical role in wholeness. Success achieved at the expense of connection often feels empty. A whole person understands that collaboration, support, and mutual respect are not distractions from success, but essential components of it. Trust and authenticity attract opportunities that hustle alone cannot secure. There is a misconception that slowing down means falling behind. In reality, wholeness often increases effectiveness. When the mind is not scattered by internal conflict, focus sharpens. When the body is regulated, stamina improves. When values are clear, effort is directed rather than wasted. Progress becomes steady rather than erratic. Wholeness also allows a healthier relationship with failure. Instead of collapsing into shame or doubling down on self-punishment, the individual remains intact. Failure becomes feedback. Learning replaces self-criticism. This capacity to stay whole under challenge is a key factor in long-term success. Hustle alone is unsustainable because it depends on constant pressure. Pressure exhausts the nervous system and narrows perception. Wholeness creates internal safety, which supports creativity, resilience, and adaptability. These qualities are essential in a changing world where rigid effort is no longer enough. As wholeness deepens, the need to prove oneself diminishes. Effort continues, but it is no longer desperate. Achievement becomes integrated into life rather than consuming it. Success arrives not as a trophy earned through suffering, but as a natural outcome of living in alignment. True success does not demand self-abandonment. It requires self-connection. When the inner world is integrated, the outer world responds. Hustle may open doors, but wholeness determines which doors are worth walking through and which successes can be sustained without losing oneself.